Today, we talk about the 5 most surprising teams of the 2021-2022 NFL season. And in this scenario, we are talking about surprising as in like a good thing, not in a bad thing, like, surprise, the Texans are still bad. Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. This is the kind of content I'm going to make because the Packers aren't playing this week, Grossi, and here we go. We did the 5 most disappointing teams last week, and now we're going to shift gears a little bit right before the start of the playoffs and talk about 5 playoff teams. Yes, they're all in the playoffs that outperformed what our expectations were going to be. This could be from the preseason or the offseason, how we thought or anticipated these teams were going to do, or it could be the trials and tribulations that they went through during the season and still managed to be good. So starting off with number 5, you got the Philadelphia Eagles. To me, one of the most surprising teams this season, because I think I'm with a lot of people who thought the Eagles were going to be straight up dog poo-poo this year. In that Jalen Hurts last year, I don't think even like the Eagles expressed a lot of confidence in him. They were definitely missing some guys on that roster. They decided to go and draft a wide receiver in the first round again, and you're like, oh boy, this ain't it. And let's be fair. To be fair? No, let's be fair. The end of the Eagles schedule is kind of a joke. It was definitely a walk in the park, but at the same time, they were still able to punch their ticket in the NFC and make it to the playoffs. And heading into that Dallas game, as I've said many times, they were the number 1 rushing team in the NFL. They really committed to the run. On top of that, they hit a home run with Smith. You know, Jalen Reagor, not so much. But the Eagles, I think, have definitely impressed people because a lot of people were looking at them like maybe you win 6 games this entire year. Now, it could be argued that they are the worst team in the playoffs, but I still think that they get some kudos, so they come in at number 5. Number 4, you got the New England Patriots, who during this season at times looked like the evil empire had returned. And listen, they only have to win 3 games and they're in the Super Bowl, so there's still no guarantee that the evil empire has not returned. And the reason why I don't have it a little bit higher is because I put out a video earlier this offseason talking about how the evil empire could be back and the Patriots could be really good this year. They drafted Mac Jones, who a lot of people saw he was not a top 5 pick. So Mac Jones just fell down to the New England Patriots. And look, he's been pretty darn good for the Patriots. Now, I will say, the last few games of the season, Mac Jones really hasn't looked that great, hasn't taken care of the football, but Mac Jones has had a pretty successful year, especially considering it's his rookie season. On top of that, that defense returned to form. The run game was really, really good. And the Patriots, they punched their ticket, nearly winning their division. They have a divisional game with the Bills on Saturday, and if they win that, eternal darkness might fall over the land once again. Number 3, you got the Tennessee Titans. And this wasn't really from a preseason perspective, because I think people thought the Titans, including myself, were going to be a good football team this year. They got Julio Jones. Of course, they got A.J. Brown. You know, he went off last year. On top of that, you, of course, have Derrick Henry. And Ryan Tannehill is a very underrated QB. If that defense was able to get a little bit better, which it did, they would be contenders, and they're in a very weak division. However, what happened? Derrick Henry going down with a major injury. So it's not necessarily surprising the Titans made the playoffs. It's the fact that they finished as the number 1 seed in the AFC that I think is the most surprising development here. They were able to kind of pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and they were able to go out and win enough games that they were able to clinch that number 1 seed. So for me, I think that's worthy of making a top 5 list. In addition, their defense definitely improved from last year. I mean, the bar was really, really low, but they got much better getting after the quarterback. And if they show up like they have been these past few weeks, especially if Derrick Henry is able to return, they are going to be Super Bowl contenders. So the Titans, they're sitting at number 3, and it was a bit shocking for them to go as high as they did. Number 2, you got the Vegas Raiders. I mean, I don't know how you could say this team is not surprising. I'll just speak personally. I had very little expectations for the Raiders this season. And they're such an anomaly to me because you look at how they started this season and how they ended the season with crazy overtime wins. And I think that encapsulates like what the Raiders are. But all the things that they have gone through this season, yes, I don't think they're going to go far in the playoffs. But the fact that they made the playoffs, head coach, gone. Losing their leading wide receiver, gone. They're having issues with members of their secondary, gone. All of these things that are happening, and these are big monumental shifts, and they're still able to punch their ticket into the playoffs. I gotta tip my hat to the Raiders because that team has undergone so many trying events this season, and they still able to come out. They didn't win their division or anything, but they still made it to the dance, and I think that 100% warrants them to be very high up on this list because I think as soon as you had their head coach go out the door, there are people like, oh, well, they're dead in the water. Then the stuff with Henry Ruggs happened, and it's like, oh, well, now they don't have as many weapons. But Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, been real good. And so because of that, Raiders, you surprised me. And finally, the number one team, and I think this is the most surprising, you got the kitty goes meow Cincinnati Bengals. I think there were some people who thought the Bengals were going to do well this year. However, I don't think many predicted they would win the AFC North. And they started the year out really, really strong. They dipped in the middle, and then they were roaring at the end of the year. Joe Burrow had a phenomenal season. On top of that, Jamar Chase, which many people criticized for making that pick over an offensive lineman. I was one of those people. Well, it seemed like that was a pretty damn good pick now. They still could use a better offensive line, don't get me wrong, but Jamar Chase has been an absolute stud. Had a little bit of a dip, but just like that entire team, they were amazing in the back half. On top of that, you're not only looking at Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon having another good year. You have fracking T. Higgins rocking and rolling again after he had a good year without Joe Burrow last year. And of course, you have Boyd as well. So that offense is just really good. That defense looked better than it did last year. Able to get after the quarterback. And so they're sneakily good. And so the Bengals, they're coming into the postseason with one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. So I am incredibly surprised by the Bengals in a very competitive division in which a lot of people are like, oh, the Ravens or the Browns are going to win that division. Nope. The Steelers and the Bengals made the playoffs. Two teams that people did not expect at all. I almost put the Steelers on this list, but, they kind of limped into here. So the Bengals, for me, are the most surprising team of the year. The fact that they actually have Super Bowl aspirations in the second year of Joe Burrow, yeah, pretty damn impressive. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. What other team surprised you this year in a good way? Let me know what you think. You guys find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media you see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.